Have you ever felt that your life, no matter how well it looks on the outside, doesn't truly belong to you? That you're walking through a world that feels borrowed, like a costume that no longer fits your soul? There's a moment, often hidden in the most ordinary day, when it begins. You could be pouring your morning coffee, driving the same road you've taken for years, or staring at the glow of your phone late at night. And then, suddenly, you sense it. A quiet voice rising beneath the noise. A tremor in your chest that whispers, "This isn't who I am anymore." Most people dismiss it. They say it's stress, exhaustion, or just a phase. But deep down, you know it's something else. It's not confusion, it's recognition. Like a spark in the darkness, your soul begins to remember. And once that memory stirs, nothing around you feels the same. Imagine standing in front of a mirror and realizing the reflection staring back doesn't carry your essence. The clothes, the job title, the routines, they all belong to a version of you that's slipping away. What emerges in its place is harder to name, but impossible to ignore. Your thoughts shift, your emotions deepen. Even the air around you feels charged with a strange new weight, as though the universe is gently rearranging the fabric of your reality. This is not a coincidence, and it does not happen to everyone. It touches only those rare souls whose energy is strong enough to shoulder something greater, the weight of awakening. And if you've felt this subtle rupture in your own life, if you've sensed the invisible threads of your old identity loosening, then understand, it isn't the end of your story. It is the first sign of something few ever experience. Because hidden within this symptom lies the undeniable mark of the chosen ones. The question is, what happens when the world you built begins to collapse and the life you thought was yours no longer lets you in? You've probably had moments that seemed small on the surface, yet carried a weight you couldn't explain. A dream that came back again and again, so vivid that you woke up with the feeling that someone, or something, was trying to tell you a secret. Maybe it wasn't just a dream, but a message wrapped in symbols your conscious mind could barely decode. You see yourself walking down the same corridor, entering the same room, or meeting the same figure. Night after night it follows you, and in the quiet of your waking hours, you ask yourself, why does this keep returning? Or perhaps you've noticed numbers that seem to stalk you. You look at the clock and it's 11:11. You pay for groceries and the receipt shows 33. You check a license plate at a red light and again, the same digits glare back at you. At first, you laugh it off. Coincidence, you tell yourself, but deep down something stirs. Because what are the odds? Why do these patterns appear when your mind is most restless, when your heart is asking questions it cannot answer? And then there are the sensations that move through your body, impossible to categorize. A sudden heaviness in the chest when you enter a certain place. A rush of warmth that floods you when a stranger locks eyes with you. Goosebumps that rise, even though the air is still. Your rational mind struggles to explain it. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's fatigue, but your spirit knows better. It whispers that these aren't accidents, they're alignments, subtle signals in a language most of the world has forgotten how to read. Think about the times you've walked into a room and immediately felt uneasy, as if the air itself carried a warning. Or those days when, without reason, you sense that something important is about to happen. And then it does. People call it intuition. A gut feeling, a trick of the subconscious. But what if it isn't a trick? What if it's the way your soul speaks when logic refuses to listen? These moments can be both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because they hint that you're not alone, that the universe is alive and watching. Unsettling because they leave you with more questions than answers. Why you? Why now? Why does the world suddenly feel filled with hidden codes, as if reality itself is trying to wake you from a dream? Most people ignore these signals. They chalk them up to randomness, to chance. But chosen ones don't have that luxury. They feel them too strongly to deny. They can't silence the voice that says, "Pay attention, this means something." And once you start paying attention, you see it everywhere. The dream that foreshadows a decision you've been afraid to make. The number that shows up on the exact day you were about to give up. The heaviness that stops you from walking through a certain door, saving you from a mistake you'll never fully know. The pain lies here, in carrying a secret you can't explain to others. How do you tell a friend that a recurring dream is guiding your choices? How do you explain that numbers feel like answers? How do you confess that your body reacts to unseen energies, and you know, without proof, that it matters? You fear they'll think you're imagining things, that you're fragile, that you're too sensitive. So you stay silent, carrying the mystery in your heart, torn between doubt and a deep knowing you can't turn off. This is where loneliness creeps in. You smile in conversations where others talk about their daily routines, but your mind is replaying last night's dream, analyzing the symbols like a map. You nod along when people dismiss coincidences, but inside you feel the weight of patterns too precise to ignore. You laugh when someone calls it superstition, yet your chest tightens because you know the truth. These signs are not superstition, they are communication. And once you recognize it, the world changes. Ordinary life becomes layered with messages. A song on the radio plays the exact words you needed to hear. A stranger's casual sentence answers a question you've carried silently for weeks. A sudden detour on the road leads you to a place you were meant to discover. None of it feels random anymore. The veil has been lifted, and you realize reality is not just solid, it is symbolic. But here lies the great mystery. Why are you seeing it? Why is your life threaded with signs while others walk blind, never noticing? Could it be that your soul is tuned to a frequency most people cannot hear? Could it be that what feels like strangeness, isolation, or even burden is in truth the mark of something greater unfolding inside you? And if that's true, if these dreams, numbers, sensations, and whispers are not coincidences but confirmations, then what exactly are they preparing you for? There is a reason why these strange dreams, repeating numbers and invisible whispers follow you. They are not random signals scattered in the wind. They are the first great sign of an awakening reserved only for those who carry the weight of a greater assignment. And that sign is this: the collapse of the false self. It begins the moment you realize that the life you built, the job, the roles, the titles, even the relationships, suddenly feels hollow. You look around and feel as though you are inhabiting someone else's story, as if you were handed a script that no longer makes sense to your soul. This sensation is not failure, not confusion, and not weakness. It is the first step of remembrance. For centuries, mystics and prophets spoke of this moment. In the Bible, Paul wrote, "You must put off your old self, which is being corrupted by deceitful desires, and put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness." Ephesians 4:22-24. These are not abstract words. They describe the exact fracture that chosen ones experience when their soul refuses to remain imprisoned inside an identity built only for survival. Ancient initiates of the mystery schools in Egypt described it as dying before you die. The false persona, stitched together by society's expectations, begins to dissolve. The masks crack, the illusions collapse, and in that collapse, the truth begins to breathe again. That is why it feels so unbearable at first, because every structure you thought was you begins to betray you. Think of it like this. Imagine a snake shedding its skin. To the snake, the shedding is uncomfortable. The old skin resists. It clings. But if the snake refuses to release it, It suffocates. You are the same. The soul cannot expand inside the confines of a false identity. The moment the awakening begins, the old life cannot contain you anymore. This is the secret hidden behind that first symptom. When nothing feels like you anymore, it is not because you are lost. It is because you are being found. The false self is being dismantled, so the eternal self can emerge. But here's the forbidden truth few dare to say out loud. Not everyone receives this call. Most people live and die in the comfort of their illusions, never questioning, never breaking, never awakening. They stay asleep because the weight of truth would crush them. The fact that you are even feeling this rupture means your soul was chosen to hold more light than the average human heart dares to carry. Look back at your own life. Can you recall the moment when your career, your relationship, or your ambitions stopped feeling like they belonged to you? That silent dissatisfaction, that unshakable restlessness, it wasn't failure, it was initiation. It was the tearing open of the veil that kept you tied to a life that was never yours. Chosen ones are not marked by titles, wealth, or recognition. They are marked by this fracture, because in that fracture the world loses its grip, and eternity places its hand on your shoulder. This is why the symptom is so rare. It requires enormous spiritual strength to lose everything familiar, not physically but energetically, and not collapse into despair. It requires the courage to watch your old reflection vanish and not cling to it. Most people cannot bear that. But you were chosen to bear it, and with this revelation comes a heavy but sacred truth. The more your false self collapses, the more space your true mission has to enter. You may not know what that mission is yet. You may only feel the ache, the emptiness, the distance from what once satisfied you. But understand, emptiness is not absence. It is preparation. The soil is being cleared for the seed that only you can carry. This is why you've been seeing the signs, the numbers, the dreams. They are confirmations from the unseen world that your dismantling has meaning. They are messages sent in code, reminding you that you are not unraveling, you are awakening. Think of Moses before the burning bush. His life as a shepherd was simple, ordinary. But then in an ordinary moment, fire appeared in a place it should not have been. And the voice of God spoke, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." That command was not about shoes. It was about identity. Moses was being asked to remove the old coverings, to strip away the false self, because his true mission was about to begin. So it is with you. The first great sign of the chosen ones is not fame, not success, not perfection. It is this inner collapse, this spiritual stripping, and though the world will call it confusion, depression, or burnout, those who know, know. It is the fingerprint of destiny. Now, if your heart is burning as you hear this, if you recognize yourself in these words, then understand, you are not alone. There is a circle of souls across the world experiencing the same rupture, the same dismantling, the same awakening. This is not an accident. This is a hidden community, a spiritual family rising silently, guided by signs few can see. And if you want to walk this path together, to share in revelations that most of the world dismisses as madness, I invite you, gently yet with urgency, to join this circle. Click like, subscribe, and become part of this community. Not a community of strangers, but of chosen ones who are finally remembering who they are. Because the first secret has been revealed. But it is only the beginning. The question that now rises is this: once the false self collapses, what new power begins to take its place? Let me tell you a story. Not about someone extraordinary in the world's eyes, but about someone who once looked just like you. Her name was Sarah. On the surface, she lived an ordinary life in a quiet suburb outside of Denver. She had a steady job, a circle of friends, and the kind of daily routine that made sense to anyone looking from the outside. But behind the curtain of normalcy, something was stirring, something she could not explain away with reason. It started with dreams. At first, they were faint, flashes of imagery that dissolved when she opened her eyes. But soon they grew heavier, like a film replaying itself every night. Sarah dreamed she was standing in a hallway lined with countless doors. Some doors were open, showing glimpses of her past. Others were locked, no matter how hard she tried to push. And always, at the end of the hallway, there was one door glowing with light so intense it almost hurt to look at. She would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. She wrote the dream down, thinking it was nothing more than stress. But then came the numbers. First, on her alarm clock, 3:33 a.m., the exact time she woke up from the dream. Then, on receipts, on license plates, on digital signs blinking along the highway. The numbers wouldn't leave her alone, as though they were following her into every corner of her life. And then came the sensation in her chest, a weight, almost like someone pressing a hand over her heart. Not painful, but impossible to ignore. It struck her in grocery stores, at meetings, even when she was laughing with friends. A sudden stillness would overtake her, as if the world around her paused for a fraction of a second. Sarah began to think she was losing her mind. Who could she tell? Her friends would dismiss it as stress. Her parents would call it anxiety, and part of her wanted to believe them, to bury the strange signs under the safety of logic. But the signs didn't stop. They grew louder. One afternoon, she was driving home from work when the weight in her chest returned. The traffic light turned red, and as she stopped, her eyes were drawn to a billboard she had passed hundreds of times before. But this time, she noticed a single word printed larger than the rest, as if it was burning into her vision: awaken. Tears filled her eyes before she even understood why. It was as if the universe itself had spoken directly to her. And in that moment, Sarah knew this was not coincidence, this was communication. From that day on, her life began to unravel in ways she couldn't control. The job she once clung to began to feel suffocating. Her conversations with friends suddenly rang hollow. Even her reflection in the mirror felt like a stranger looking back. It terrified her, but beneath the fear was a strange sense of relief. She wasn't broken, she was being remade. Sarah's nights became sacred. She stopped running from the dreams and began sitting with them. She lit candles, wrote in her journal, and prayed for understanding. Slowly, she realized that the glowing door in her dreams was not a random image. It was an invitation to step out of the life she had been assigned and into the life she was born to live. And the numbers, the sensations, the messages, they weren't haunting her, they were guiding her. Like breadcrumbs scattered through her reality, they pulled her closer to a truth she had buried for years. She had always felt called to heal. As a child, she would sit with wounded animals, whispering prayers over them. She had a gift for listening, for sensing pain in others before they spoke. But she had silenced that calling in the noise of adulthood. Now, the silence was breaking. The more she leaned into solitude, the more her inner compass spoke. And though it frightened her, Sarah felt something she hadn't in years: peace. Of course, not everyone understood. Friends drifted away, family shook their heads, but Sarah no longer needed their approval because she knew the truth. The signs that once felt like madness were actually her soul's way of remembering. Her story is not unique. Different faces, different details, but the same awakening. Maybe you've had the dreams. Maybe you've seen the numbers. Maybe you've felt the sudden weight in your chest, or the strange synchronicities that arrive at exactly the right moment. And maybe, like Sarah, you've wondered if you're imagining it all. But what if you're not? What if those very signs are proof that you are among the chosen ones, called not to live an ordinary script, but to step through the glowing door of your own destiny? If Sarah's story resonated with you, if you've ever lived something like this, I want to hear it. Share your own experience in the comments. Tell me the dreams, the numbers, the whispers that marked your path. Because this isn't just my story or Sarah's, it's ours. And in our next journey together, we will uncover why these signs always seem to arrive right before everything in life begins to change. The first secret was the collapse of the false self, the stripping away of the masks that kept you bound to a life you no longer recognized. But once that collapse begins, something else emerges. It is subtle, yet undeniable. And this is the second great sign of the chosen ones. A heightened sensitivity to energy. This is not the same as simple intuition. It goes deeper. It is as if your entire body becomes a tuning fork, vibrating in response to the unseen frequencies of the world around you. The places you once entered without thought now overwhelm you. A crowded mall feels suffocating. A busy office drains you within minutes. Even certain people, those who carry heavy, unresolved energy, suddenly feel unbearable to be around. At first, you might believe something is wrong with you. You tell yourself, I must be getting anxious. Maybe I'm becoming antisocial. But pause and look closer. What if this isn't a disorder? What if it's a recalibration? Your soul, attuning itself to a frequency that no longer tolerates the numbness of the world. Ancient traditions spoke of this sensitivity as a gift, though often disguised as a burden. In the Psalms, David cried out, "My soul has become like a weaned child within me." It is a poetic way of describing this new fragility, yet also strength. Because once you feel the world this deeply, you can no longer ignore what is false. You are compelled to live only in what is true. Mystics from the East taught the same. The yogis described it as pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses, not because the world is rejected, but because the inner world begins to speak louder than external noise. The chosen ones are led into this state so they can perceive what lies beyond ordinary perception. But here is the hidden meaning. This sensitivity is not weakness, it is a compass. When you feel drained in someone's presence, it is not paranoia, it is information. When you feel peace near another person, that too is guidance. Your spirit is learning to discern truth not with logic, but with resonance. Think of it like learning a new language. At first, the words are confusing. The grammar makes no sense. But slowly, with practice, your ears begin to catch the rhythm, and your tongue learns to form the sounds. Sensitivity to energy works the same way. At first, it feels overwhelming. Too loud, too bright, too much. But in truth, it is the universe teaching you a new form of communication. And like any language, it can be practiced, which brings us to the technique. The grounding breath technique. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by energy, whether in a crowd, in a tense meeting, or even scrolling through the endless noise of the digital world, try this simple practice. Pause. Place your feet firmly on the ground. Inhale deeply, imagining that with each breath you are pulling light from above your head down through your spine. Exhale slowly, releasing any heaviness into the earth, as though the ground beneath you is capable of absorbing what you no longer need. Repeat 3 times, silently saying within yourself, I return to my center. It may seem simple, almost too simple, but chosen ones know truth is often hidden in simplicity. This technique recalibrates your nervous system, quiets the noise, and reminds your spirit that you are not here to absorb the chaos of the world. You are here to filter it. Over time, this practice transforms you. You begin to trust your body's signals. You notice how your chest tightens in false environments, how your skin tingles in authentic ones. You start to navigate life not by pressure or expectation, but by the gentle nudges of resonance. And that is when energy sensitivity shifts from burden to blessing. Think of Sarah, whose story you heard before. Once she recognized her sensitivity, not as fragility, but as guidance. Everything changed. She stopped forcing herself into draining environments. She chose friends who nourished her instead of depleting her. She replaced constant background noise with moments of silence. Slowly, her life began to align, not because she pushed harder, but because she listened deeper. This is the second secret. Sensitivity is not the end of your strength. It is the birth of your true compass. But let me be clear, not everyone reaches this stage. Many feel the collapse of the false self, but when sensitivity arrives, they panic. They medicate it, deny it, or bury it. They fear the discomfort and choose to return to numbness. But chosen ones cannot return. Once you begin to feel, you cannot unfeel. And this is why sensitivity is so sacred. It is the universe's way of reshaping your decisions, your connections, your entire path, not by force, but by resonance. So tonight, when you notice the world feels too loud, don't see it as weakness. Practice the grounding breath. Listen to the subtle voice of your body. Write down what you feel. Track the patterns. With time, you'll realize you're not being drained. You're being trained. And this training is leading somewhere. Because beyond the collapse of the false self, beyond the sharpening of sensitivity, lies a third sign. A sign so rare, so hidden, that even among the awakened few, only a handful truly recognize it. A sign that doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how reality itself responds to you. There is a sign deeper than all the others, deeper than the collapse of the false self, deeper than sensitivity to energies. It is not a dream, not a number, not even a physical sensation. It is the rarest symptom of all. The moment when you realize that reality itself bends in response to your inner state. At first, it feels impossible. How could the outer world reflect the whispers of your soul? But then it begins to happen. You think of someone, and they call you within minutes. You feel a wave of despair, and the lights in your house flicker as though the atmosphere itself shares in your heaviness. You align with gratitude, and suddenly doors open that you never knew existed. This is the third and most profound secret. The chosen ones awaken to the realization that creation is no longer separate from them. They are not observers of reality, they are participants in its design. The ancient mystics knew this. In the Gospel of John, it is written, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." To those who read it literally, these words speak only of history. But to the awakened, they reveal a deeper mystery. Creation responds to vibration, to sound, to consciousness itself. Quantum physics centuries later would stumble upon the same truth. The double-slit experiment revealed that the mere act of observation changes the outcome. The universe does not stand apart, cold and indifferent. It listens, it answers, it bends. When the chosen ones reach this stage, they begin to feel that time, matter, and circumstance are not fixed prisons, but fluid mirrors. The world no longer appears solid, it appears alive, breathing in rhythm with their own inner state. Imagine standing at the shore of an infinite ocean. Every thought, every word, every intention you send into it returns as a wave. At first, you may not notice the connection between what you cast and what returns. But once you see it, once you feel the ocean answering you, you can never go back. This is why your dreams matter. This is why your numbers matter. This is why your sensitivity matters. They were all preparing you for this climax. The awareness that your consciousness is not a bystander, it is the axis upon which your reality spins. And yet, this realization is not about control. It is about alignment. The chosen ones do not manipulate the world with ego. They allow themselves to align with a higher will, and through that alignment, the universe responds. When you surrender to truth, reality reshapes itself around you. This is the moment when you begin to understand why the old self had to die, why the false identities collapsed, why your heart was forced to feel so deeply, because only through that stripping could you arrive here, standing in the presence of the most forbidden truth, that you and creation are intertwined. I want to pause here because if your heart is beating faster, if your spirit feels both terrified and alive as you hear these words, then you need to know something important. This message, this revelation, it is not delivered for fame or profit or empty applause. It is shared for you and only you because you were meant to hear it. This work is done with passion, with devotion, with fire in the soul. And if you feel that resonance, then I ask you, become part of this circle. Like this video, subscribe to this channel and step into this community of awakened souls. Every subscription, every gesture of support strengthens this movement of remembrance. Not for numbers, not for money, but for the power of souls uniting across the world. Because here lies the most humbling truth. Once you realize reality responds to you, the question changes. It is no longer, why is this happening to me? But, what vibration am I sending into the world? Your life ceases to be random. Every thought becomes sacred, every word becomes a seed, every action a prophecy. And in that realization, many chosen ones break down in tears. Because they understand. They were never victims of a cruel universe. They were authors of a forgotten script, co-writing with the divine all along. But with great revelation comes great responsibility. What do you do when you realize the world is listening? What do you create when every word carries weight? And more importantly, what hidden mission has been waiting quietly for this very moment of awakening? All along this journey, you've seen the hidden threads that weave through your life, the collapse of the false self, the sensitivity that sharpens into a compass, the profound realization that reality itself bends to the vibration you carry. These are not accidents. They are not coincidences. They are sacred invitations, signs whispering that you were never ordinary. Every dream that haunted you, every number that stalked you, every moment your chest tightened for no logical reason, none of it was random. These were the markers of awakening, symbols coded into your path long before you understood their meaning. The universe has been speaking to you, calling you back to the truth you were born with. And now, you stand at the threshold of remembrance. But here's the most important truth of all. You are not awakening for yourself alone. The chosen ones are never called only for personal peace or private enlightenment. You are awakening because your light is needed. Because the world is drowning in noise, fear, and confusion, and your soul carries the frequency that can break through. Think about it. Why you? Why were you given dreams that others dismiss? Why do you feel what others ignore? Why do you see connections where others see chaos? It is because you are being trained, prepared, set apart. You are the living proof that consciousness can wake up in the middle of a sleeping world. And when you live this truth, something extraordinary happens. You become a mirror for others. Your presence becomes a sanctuary. People who are lost feel calmer around you, though they may not know why. Strangers find courage in your words. Loved ones rediscover hope when they see you living from a place of authenticity instead of fear. This is how the chosen ones change the world. Not by force, but by resonance. The prophets spoke of this. Jesus himself said, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden." Matthew 5:14. These words were not poetic flattery, they were prophecy. You are that light, you are that city. And though the darkness of the world tries to smother it, your flame was never meant to be extinguished. So now the question turns inward. What will you do with this awakening? Will you shrink back, pretending you never saw the signs? Or will you step forward, daring to live in the fullness of who you are? This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of your mission. And though it may feel heavy, remember this: you are not walking it alone. Across the world, there are countless souls, just like you, experiencing the same symptoms, the same signs, the same call. Together, we form a hidden community, a circle of remembrance rising quietly, invisibly, but powerfully. And that is why I invite you now, not as a formality, but as an act of resonance. If these words have stirred something in your heart, if you've seen yourself reflected in this journey, then step into this circle, like this video. Subscribe to this channel, not because it feeds numbers, not because it brings profit, but because it strengthens the signal of this community. Every like, every subscription is another light joining the constellation of chosen ones across the world. And I want to know you, truly. Leave a comment below with your name and your city. Share your presence, your story, your sign, because in the next video, I want to honor you, to speak your name into this circle, to remind you that you are seen, that you are part of something greater. Imagine thousands of voices, thousands of names rising together, each one a flame, each one a beacon. That is how movements are born. That is how the chosen ones step out of isolation and into destiny. So write your name, share your city, add your flame to this fire. Because the more we rise together, the stronger the signal becomes. And as we close this chapter, let your heart hold this one truth. The signs that have been haunting you were never punishments. They were prophecies, they were confirmations, they were the voice of the eternal reminding you of who you truly are. But understand this, the journey does not stop here. What you've uncovered tonight is only the opening of the gate. Beyond it lies a mystery even greater, a revelation waiting to shake the very foundation of what you believe reality to be. So let your spirit rest, but not settle. Let your heart be at peace, but stay alert, because something far greater is about to be revealed.